gone in Atlanta before the MetLife show, and I went to MetLife night one, and she said to, thank you, and she said to my older sister, Jack.
To do what we do and to make movies is such a gift, and I love it so much because it allows me to connect with all of you. I'm deeply thankful that so many of you have stayed with us through 3 summers. And even if you were only here for 2, or just returned this time, you're still part of a very important family to me. This journey has been hard but wonderful, and I feel so grateful to have shared it with you all. As for a terrible audition experience, yes, I definitely have one. Oddly enough, it happened when I was auditioning for a Broadway revival of a very famous musical. While I was singing, the producers and directors were literally ordering lunch. It was incredibly difficult and honestly a bit humiliating. But just a week later, I booked West Side Story. This industry is tough and often lonely, so lonely at times. But I've come to realize that if loneliness can exist, so can hope, and I will be okay. To everyone who hates when I succeed, I think about the winged victory of Samothrace, which arrived at the Louvre in pieces, yet people still line up to admire her. Despite my flaws, cracks, and breaks, and there are many, I can only hope that at every premiere and every project, people will still show up to see me. Now, the Hollywood rumor mill is spinning again, and this time Rachel Zegler finds herself at the very center. What began as quiet whispers has now escalated into full-blown industry chatter. Reports suggest that her publicist has walked away during perhaps the most chaotic moment of her career. The timing couldn't be worse, and it's raising eyebrows across the entertainment world. This situation has been brewing for weeks. First came the silence, which at first seemed calculated, even strategic. But then came the cancellations, piling up one after another. And now this sudden publicist exit. According to sources, it wasn't a quiet departure, but rather the breaking point in a publicity strategy already unraveling. In Hollywood, it's rare for publicists to abandon a client in crisis, especially when that client is a rising star with multiple projects in development. Yet insiders insist the situation had become unmanageable, with no strategy left to execute. No one wanted to be the public face of what had turned into a PR disaster. The collapse didn't happen overnight. It built gradually, long before the public ever caught wind of it. At first, there were whispers of a planned reset, but behind the scenes, panic was rising. Studios were withdrawing invitations, industry connections were pulling back, and reputations were taking damage. By the time her publicist reportedly walked away, the fallout was already in full swing. The vacuum left behind only deepened the crisis, stripping away career momentum with every missed appearance and every lost chance to control the narrative. As speculation grew louder, questions mounted, and yet there were no answers. Rachel Zegler, once positioned as part of Hollywood's exciting new wave of talent, is now facing this storm largely on her own. What's most telling is the deliberate silence following the Evita incident. Where most celebrities would lean on conventional damage control tactics, she had no spokesperson, no protective barrier between herself and an increasingly skeptical industry. Rachel Zegler's team faced mounting scrutiny after opting for a controversial public relations strategy that appeared to backfire spectacularly. Rather than issuing a well-timed press release, giving a compassionate interview, or maintaining a thoughtful social media presence, her representatives reportedly enforced a complete media blackout. According to sources close to the situation, this was not a mistake, but a deliberate tactic. The idea was to keep exposure to a minimum, let public interest fade, and reintroduce Zegler once the controversy had cooled. But the opposite happened. The silence did not ease tensions. It intensified them. With no statements from Zegler or her team, the internet filled the void with speculation and rumor. What was once perceived as a calculated, enigmatic silence quickly began to feel harmful. Insiders claim heated internal debates took place. Some advisors argued for aggressive media interviews and transparency, while others insisted that speaking out would only fan the flames. This indecision created a paralysis that led to repeated missed opportunities and growing alarm in the industry. The most concerning moment wasn't a dramatic public scandal, but a subtle incident at a high-profile press junket for a streaming project. Zegler had been scheduled to attend, complete with talking points prepared. Yet when the cameras started rolling, she was absent. No illness was reported. Instead, journalists were discreetly told to skip her segment altogether. According to a PR source, this wasn't an accident. The decision came directly from her team, who pulled her from the event as a last-ditch attempt to limit her exposure. Rather than protect her image, the move fueled even greater speculation. Was she being shielded from something? Or was there a deeper problem behind the scenes? The fallout was immediate. The studio was angered. Co-stars were left scrambling to cover the gap, and an event meant to highlight the ensemble turned into a discussion about Zegler's absence. What had been framed as a smart strategy of silence now looked more like career sabotage. Industry events began quietly removing her from lineups. A Women in Cinema panel was withdrawn after one canceled appearance, and a scheduled fan Q&A was postponed indefinitely. Sponsors and studio representatives reportedly flooded her publicist with calls demanding answers. Trust eroded quickly, not just between Zegler and her publicist, but within her entire team. Insiders described the situation less as a coordinated PR campaign and more as a chaotic war room filled with competing agendas. The publicist wasn't just battling bad press, but also clashing with Zegler's own management team. Meetings, according to reports, became heated. What was intended as a controlled, quiet strategy for recovery instead exposed fractures within her camp and confirmed to many observers that the PR approach had already failed beyond repair. As tensions mounted, communication within Rachel Zegler's camp grew increasingly strained. Team members began pushing conflicting narratives, while Zegler herself was said to be difficult to reach and less receptive to the standard redemption arc often used to rebuild reputations. Her publicist reportedly pushed for a swift course correction, warning that the longer Zegler remained silent, the harder it would be to recover. Their proposal included a carefully vulnerable social media post, a strategic interview, or a low-key photo opportunity with a respected industry ally. Nothing extravagant, just enough to humanize the situation and shift the tone. But her management team allegedly resisted, favoring what they described as the power of silence. According to one insider, they wanted to handle it like Beyoncé, but they forgot. Rachel isn't Beyoncé. The situation grew even more complicated when strict layers of approval were placed on who could speak for her. At one point, even Zegler's spokesperson was said to require multiple levels of clearance for comments, approvals that often arrived late or not at all. They were essentially silencing their own spokesperson, said one source familiar with the dynamics. You can't execute a crisis plan when there isn't even agreement about what the crisis actually is. Meanwhile, fans and the media were losing patience. Every day of silence deepened the vacuum, allowing speculation and rumor to dominate the conversation. While the publicist reportedly worked to line up media opportunities and appearances, other team members shut them down before they could materialize. Hollywood insiders began to notice the disarray. Competing PR firms caught wind of the dysfunction, and opportunities evaporated. By the time the publicist walked away, many in the industry weren't surprised. They were burned out and honestly embarrassed, one source explained. This wasn't just a difficult client, it was someone turning into a liability, with a strategy that had become an industry joke. The departure was not softened by a polite public statement or quiet farewell. Instead, it was a clean break, full distancing from the chaos. The final straw reportedly came when a major studio, preparing to move forward with Zegler's team on upcoming press conferences, refused to proceed unless her reputation was actively repaired. It was the kind of language usually reserved for celebrities weathering scandals of far greater magnitude, not Broadway feuds. Yet when the publicist relayed this warning, there was no response, no strategy shift, just more silence. This was especially striking because the publicist was no novice. They were a seasoned professional who had shepherded bigger names through even larger crises. Insiders claim they knew exactly what needed to be done, but every suggestion was ignored or rejected. It was like playing chess with people fighting over the color of the board, one source quipped. Now, Zegler reportedly finds herself more vulnerable than at any point since her career began. For the first time, she has no publicist to manage her image, no team to absorb the fallout, no sympathetic journalist ready with a soft landing interview. There is only silence, and the full weight of controversy resting on her shoulders.
His aviators on. He's like, gotta see the Jersey girl sing. And I just peed my pants. And there it is. Yeah, I was losing my mind.
In Hollywood, silence rarely works as a shield. Stars typically reclaim control with calculated social media posts, sympathetic leaks to tabloids, or surprise appearances designed to reset the narrative. But Zegler has been absent for weeks, offering no acknowledgement of her publicist's reported exit. The unanswered question lingers. Is this silence part of a plan, or a sign she has lost control of the story altogether? One executive affiliated with a production firm summed up the issue in stark terms. Rachel Zegler appeared increasingly isolated, stripped of the protective layer that a skilled team provides. Without a buffer, every sentence, every gesture is scrutinized, the executive explained. If she finally breaks her silence, every word will be magnified, analyzed, twisted. And the longer she waits, the more damaging the silence becomes. People don't assume the best in this business, they assume the worst. This is the peril of prolonged absence in Hollywood. In a vacuum, speculation doesn't fade away, it multiplies. Without a publicist to spin narratives or a spokesperson to clarify intent, a celebrity not only loses control of the story, they become the story. Online, fan theories sprout into viral threads, memes distort reputations, and commentary spirals beyond context. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, executives and gatekeepers begin to quietly recalibrate. Instead of considering Zegler's next opportunity, they begin weighing who might replace her in projects still in development. The cold reality of Hollywood is that opportunities are finite, and if one actor doesn't seize them, someone else will. Studios don't hesitate to move on. The fallout from her publicist's sudden exit only deepened the crisis. That professional safety net, the one resource designed to catch stars when they stumble, was gone. And the ripple effect was immediate. Industry insiders report that other PR firms have declined even preliminary conversations with Zegler's team. One veteran publicist, speaking off the record, was blunt. "It's radioactive right now. There's no upside to touching this. Just chaos." In an industry where perception is everything, being branded as too risky by the very people who build reputations can be catastrophic. Evidence of retreat is already visible. A director who once championed Zegler during press tours has gone conspicuously silent online, declining to engage with posts about her or publicly attach his name to hers. Her name, once circulated on shortlists for a buzzy musical adaptation, has reportedly been erased. Streaming platforms that only months ago positioned her as part of a new wave of diverse talent have now shifted her scheduled promotions to TBD status, a vague industry shorthand that often signals projects quietly slipping away. The quietness of these moves is perhaps the most ominous detail. In Hollywood, careers rarely collapse with explosive declarations. More often, the decline is subtle and insidious. Doors don't slam shut, they simply lock without warning. Calls stop being returned. Invitations are lost in the shuffle. Emails linger unanswered. The result isn't dramatic cancellation, but a kind of professional ghosting, where the silence is louder than any official rejection. Former colleagues, too, appear unsettled. Some cautiously engage with her older content, liking posts, leaving vague comments, but noticeably avoid referencing her in the present. It's as if they're waiting to see which way the wind will blow before fully committing to association or distance. In Hollywood, loyalty is often conditional, and silence can be its own form of judgment. Meanwhile, the fan base has splintered into factions, and social media has become the front line of the conflict. Longtime supporters have mobilized, insisting Zegler is being unfairly targeted and pointing out what they call blatant double standards. Viral threads argue that when male stars retreat into silence, it's framed as mystique or artistic depth. Yet when Zegler withdraws, it's branded as unprofessional or evasive. "You all love it when a man is mysterious," one widely shared tweet declared. But when Rachel goes quiet, suddenly it's a problem. On the other side, Critics have weaponized her silence, reframing her past interviews as ominous foreshadowing. Clips once dismissed as harmless anecdotes are now resurfacing with new, less charitable interpretations, evidence, detractors claim, of arrogance, entitlement, or immaturity. TikTok has become a hub for this reinterpretation culture, with creators dissecting facial expressions, tone, and phrasing for proof of deeper flaws. Even previously indifferent fans are showing fatigue. The narrative has become so overexposed that even those who once rooted for her are weary. A viral spoof video dramatizing her PR team in total collapse garnered over 1 million views in just 2 days. Beneath it, a comment from a former fan struck a painful chord. "I loved her, but this is exhausting." The growing sentiment is not just about scandal fatigue, it's about perception of reliability. In an industry fueled by momentum, silence signals stasis, and stasis can be fatal. While her supporters continue to argue that she's being unfairly dragged, the machinery of Hollywood is slow to forgive uncertainty. And with no publicist to engineer a return, no spokesperson to craft a counter-narrative, and no coordinated team to shield her, Zegler stands at a precarious crossroads. The longer the silence continues, the less this feels like a temporary setback, and the more it begins to resemble a slow erasure.